Greetings, Shelpers. Welcome to book club tonight. We're doing something a little bit different. I hope you enjoy. For tonight's selection, I picked Lords of Dragon Keep by C.T. Phipps. It is an isekai with dungeoneering and all that kind of elements, thinking that we would get into life and things. So I have questions for everybody who was in book club, but first I'll tell you a little bit about what the book has in store. So we follow Aaron Bartowski. Oh no, you put it up way too early.
Okay.
It's okay.
Alright, you didn't give me sign.
We follow Aaron as he works as a code monkey for a company called Epic Dungeoneering, and the company wants him to go find a writer who wrote one of their more famous properties because his book is finally done. Now, I'm just going to say this right up front. I think it's supposed to be a ripoff of George R.R. Martin.
Oh yeah, it definitely is.
So Aaron goes to find this guy, and he gets isekai'd into the world of the books, the games, whatever. It more follows the video game logic, and he is in the body of the hero named Garland, and he is supposed to save the world. So he has a character sheet, and he meets people to like fill up his party slots, and his stats are there, and he goes on this like epic adventure in order to save the land. So Garland is supposed to be one of these people called Undermasters that are like demon slayers. And here the book world has been repeating so many times that like Aaron, of course, is the last character basically to get in. So like every other hero that's already been isekai'd is dead. Or has done their own thing, like turned evil or whatever. So when he starts out, he meets this raven whose name is John, and John was like one of the last heroes. When you die, you become a raven, and you're supposed to be like the familiar or whatever to the next hero in line. So he meets John basically right away. Then the girl on the cover, her name is Ania, and she is like one of the first party members you get. She's like Garland's stepsister or something in the stories, and he's supposed to travel with her, but yet Garland in the series is also supposed to be her on again, off again lover. And there is a lot of discussion in this book on and off about what constitutes incest, because she's supposed to be his like stepsister, half sister, I don't even know, adopted sister. And Ania has a twin, and Ania's twin also is interested in Garland on and off. And John, the Raven, is basically sex crazed. Like he went through the entire world, and he was like having sex with like every NPC woman that would have him and stuff like that. And at the beginning of the story, there is a lot of emphasis on women in not so good ways. Like the beginning chapter has Barbara, like Aaron's like supervisor, and she is like cuckoo banana pants. She talks to these people with puppets and is like almost like cartoonishly evil or wicked. It's very weird. And Aragorn's sister, Wendy, is like somebody who broke up a marriage and had a lawyer that and then she got a boob job, and she's annoying. And it's like so many references at the beginning of the book are very like anti-woman coded, and I know a lot of people wouldn't probably read that, but like a reference to like getting it on with hookers and stuff. Let me see what else there were, because there were just a few things in the beginning of the book where I was just like, it was a lot, okay? there was other stuff too about women and just, but it kind of evened out. I am armed with nonsense. Hi, Shy Guy. How are you? Hope you're well. I was just kind of explaining what the book was about. And we're going to go through questions and we're going to talk about things as they arise. But yeah, so when he gets into the isekai, it just kind of gets better as far as like the misogyny. I mean, at least when they're talking about a lot of women and like their big boobies or whatever, at least most of the women don't mind that. But at the beginning, it was not so great in that way. Okay, so for those of you who read the book, first of all, I want to talk about what percentage, what chapter of the way did you get through? As far as I remember, Shy Guy got halfway through. My husband got quarter of the way through.
Unfortunately, that's how far I got, yeah.
And I read the whole way through. So based on what you read, how do you feel about the book overall? Well, it's gonna be worse Saturday into Monday, they figure. We might get 2 feet, we might get 2 inches. They have no idea. One literally said 2 to 4, one said 5 to 8, one said 16 to 24. No one knows. Absolutely no one knows. So, how did you feel about what you read overall, husby?
It was just... the start was so slow. Like, the thing with Barbara went on way too long.
Yeah, I thought that was a weird character. I literally thought Barbara was gonna end up being like some form of like Baba Yaga or like some kind of folklore character herself, and she may very well be. I mean, we haven't seen her after he gets isekai'd, but we do know eventually. There are going to be spoilers for the book, by the way, because I can't shut the fuck up. But eventually you do find out that Epic Dungeoneering, the company that Aaron works for, is maybe not everything they seem. So I would get that she's evil, but she was evil in a very like cartoonish kind of way. Okay, that's okay. You can break up whatever you want. So you thought the beginning took too long.
Yeah, definitely. It dragged.
That's fair. So you got pulled out of the story by how slow it was.
It just... I don't know. It just felt... The first scene, basically, I guess you could say, just felt like unnecessarily drawn out.
I didn't feel like they were giving us, how do I put this? It felt like they were trying to give us background information, but at the same time, some of it just wasn't necessary. Like, keeping, like, how nutsy Barbara was, it's like, I really expected, like, Barbara to feature more, like, near the end of the book. Like, I expected her to, like, come into, like, the world and be like, aha, I'm, like, this fairy tale figure, or I am from this set of folklore or whatever. Like, she would have had a bigger hand in it somehow, for as much as they hype her up. And to be fair, this is book 1 of a trilogy, so Barbara could feature more later. But
okay, you can read that.
Yep. Yeah, I do feel like they were going for satire. And we could talk about if, in a minute, we'll talk about if that was something that they actually managed to do. So I do agree with you there. So you think it became too formulaic, the satire? It did reach this similar beats on repeat, I feel. You know, the writing itself in general.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like from what I read of it. They just kept repeating certain stuff a lot.
Like John being like sex crazed, like never goes away. Like literally never. At one point in the book, I don't know if you got there, but they were talking about how birds masturbate because John can't get off as a raven.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah, I know you didn't know that. You didn't read far enough, but that is something that happened, and I think it was supposed to be funny. At least it was accurate. We had a family cockatiel named Fritzy, and Fritzy did have a good time by himself, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So they really were into the whole, like, John trying to collect every like rare card for the game that, or the card game that's in the book, and or the show or whatever. And when you sleep with like some of the more difficult characters to sleep with or whatever, you do get like really rare cards for the game called Quiffle. And John had almost an entire Quiffle deck, partially because he played the game and partially because he slept with a lot of women to get those extra cards. By the way, John is, of course, totally 100% hetero. But one of the things that I wanted to touch on with all that is I have to wait until we get there. I have to wait. Because I was going to say, one of the questions is how you feel about Aaron's character. But, yeah. So, I thought the story was okay-ish. World building was there, kind of like bare bones fantasy. The God War was okay. I actually liked that it was based off of Slavic folklore instead of Norse or Greek mythologies. Characters at least felt different from each other, although they ended up being caricatures mostly, at least at first. So, like, John is, like, the horny sidekick, and Anya is, like, the bitchy woman that the main character, like, falls in love with immediately. And, of course, part of that has to do with him being a code monkey and a geek and knowing all about her from, like, every live-action adaptation or every book or whatever the hell.
And some of the stuff you told me that happens later really doesn't make sense.
Well, there's just a lot. I could have... See, when I take a look at a book, I actually go through and I recap everything in every fucking chapter. Every time everything happens, I kind of make note of it. So I can go back through and tell you beat for beat exactly what happened, including the chapters where nothing much happened.
Oh, those existed for sure, yeah, and I was only a little bit in.
Yeah. Like, I even have characters banter, but it's about almost fucking nothing.
Yeah.
So, I know they're trying to set up the dynamics of the characters, but it doesn't really work. So, for me, the references in this book became something, but we're going to talk about that later, so...
So, don't forget to let me know when you need the slides up.
Yeah, I will. Yes, the halted pacing. And I think Shy Guy actually quit out on literally a chapter where it was all exposition. Every single bit. Like, okay, here's how everything works. Here's why we're here. Here's what's going on. And it's like, when you're writing, you need to do more than just give an info dump or a lore dump in the middle of the book. And that's literally what happened. Eventually, George R.R. Martin's character comes back in, like via a dream, mind you, and tells Aaron and John kind of exactly what's going on. And oh, you're gonna love this part, because in the dream, John is actually a human again, and he, first thing he does is goes and touched his wiener.
Dude.
So here he's human again, and they're having a shared dream. And instead of like being on guard in case they can be attacked in a dream, or in case they're being dragged into an off world of this world, because Aaron even says, oh, this world, I thought it was a dream at first, so maybe this isn't a dream. Like, there's like some kind of foresight that maybe they should be on guard. But Aaron is like, okay, we're just gonna look around, and John is like, I can actually do things now. I'm naked. Bye. I know what I'm gonna go do. So Aaron just walks away from John while John has happy time by himself.
Maybe it's a good thing I didn't finish this.
It was the most unsexual, sexual fucking read of my life. I'm serious. I am absolutely serious on that. I have like, what did I write in this paragraph? As I'm looking through this book, I said, lots of talk about sex, nudity, and masturbation, but no explicit bedroom scenes, not even descriptive groping. Even talks about bird masturbation because of John, which is, the book was correct in the description. So if you ever wanted to know about birds and masturbation, there you go. Sex talk is just background noise and filler. Most of it is unnecessary. The mawkish priestesses are accepted. Most of it was not funny, and there was excessive incest discussion. Because the whole thing about Ania and Garland being like step siblings or whatever the fuck they ended up being. So yeah, and Agata, which is, I think, is Ania's sister, twin sister, whatever, also slept with Garland. So yeah.
Which is kind of funny because he made himself sound so virtuous at the start.
Yes, that's another thing. John and Garland, John and Aaron, you know, the guy. Garland is the character he's inhabiting. John wants to fuck everything that moves, okay? Granted, that's his character.
I thought that part was kind of funny, but that's the only thing that made me really feel much of anything.
Well, that's because we've watched like movies with titles like Bitchcraft before, I think, but yeah, I didn't laugh once in this book. I don't know if like all the sexuality was supposed to be funny. I didn't know if like, you know, ripping off like George R.R. Martin was supposed to be funny. I don't know. I didn't know if Barbara's weird fucking behavior was supposed to be funny.
Nothing landed, really.
No, nothing landed for me. And like I said, they really did do like a bunch of other stuff. So I said Aaron irritated me in this book somewhat. And part of it was that he was a hypocrite. Yeah. So he talks about how John fucks everything that moves, and it's true. And how he is a one-woman man, and how he doesn't sleep around. Yeah, right. Like, the minute he sees, like, a naked Rusalka, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm sleeping with that. And then when he gets to the bar, having been waterlogged from, like, almost being drowned by her, a little bit later, there's, like, a vampire chick that's, like, an elvish vampire. He fucks her, too. And later on, there's, like, a goddess, which I guess you don't say no to fucking a goddess, but still, the point stands. So your favorite character was Bloodstorm. Guess who my favorite character was? You'll never guess. So that will be 2. Did you have a favorite character? And if so, which one?
I didn't get to this character y'all are talking about, unfortunately.
Yep. So Bloodstorm was my favorite. If you had a favorite character, you didn't even get that far in. And I just want to say to anybody out there who's like, you can't give your thoughts on a book if you DNF, that's bullshit. DNF, not DTF. Keep up here. Your thought on the book when you DTF is your thought on the book. It's DNF, I know, but just keeping you awake. You are allowed to not finish a book if you don't like the book. If you want to just walk away. But yes, Bloodstorm was my favorite. He is funny. He is astute. There is the dichotomy of battle rage and bloodlust versus the intelligence and the quiet nature of him when he's not enraged. I do like him, and I do have a slide with him, but it was near like the end, but Husby can call it up. One of the last slides you put up. Not the vocabulary, the one before.
I need this.
Okay.
1 second.
You found his personality to be the most standout, different, unique. Yeah, me too. And me too, exactly.
Okay,
the least one note out of everyone. True. times he showed he was much more knowledgeable and articulate than he usually portrayed to others. Exactly, and then he'd go back to portraying himself as being dumb.
Okay, so I got it.
So, favorite character, Bloodstorm. This is where we first really meet his character. There is a priest named Adolf who is Mithras's, like, under Mithras's deity protection, whatever. And Adolf says, "Blasphemers, I will smite thee with the power of Mithras." And it says, "Needs to diversify his material," Bloodstorm said, standing up and looking more like a mountain than a man. "You speak very strange for," I started to say. This is Aaron, because that's who tells the story. "For a half-vampire ogre? Don't make this a race thing," Bloodstorm said, charging at Father Adolf. Yes, he was comic relief, and like I said, he has the whole bloodlust but intelligent. He's actually been to the real world, like our world. I shouldn't say the real world, because his world is real as well. But he's actually been to our world and has learned a fair bit. Even though he sees Aaron as Garland, he knows Aaron is not Garland, because there have been many Garlands and they've acted different. He is Maylord, the guy who runs the Black Cat's son. So, yeah, I actually found it really, really cool. Like, you're right, he is the most diversified character. Ania most of the time has a stick up her fucking ass, and, you know, Aaron does what Aaron does. Aaron is supposed to be the most diverse character in the book, by the way. So, you have a few examples of dialogue that you liked with him? Okay, put them up. I want to see them. But yeah, everyone else I felt like was just one note. And even though, like, Ania, the reason why she's not doing the NPC circuit is because she has a bracelet like Aaron does. Okay, Narf, someone's so bad. I had to invent my own profanity for them. Yeah, when I saw Narf, I thought of Pinky from Pinky in the Brain, but that's just because I'm an old fuck.
That's what I think of too when I see it.
Yep. So, as far as Beyond Bloodstorm, things I liked about the scenes and whatnot. So, I like that Aaron could see the God fragments with the bracelet. Because later on, he could actually absorb bracelets with other bracelets, because each champion had a bracelet that was partially made from, like, a God remain or something. Yeah, that's when Bloodstorm was talking about his time at university. So Bloodstorm, the barbarian with the barbarian rage actually went into, or berserker rage, actually had a short-lived stint at a university. And then I did find some of the battles decent, but they were pretty quick as well. They almost always ended up in the same formula, which is Aaron gets lucky for the most part, but at the same time ends up being hurt. So then he has to heal himself, and then Agata, Ania's sister, ends up having to help heal him as well, or Ania does the first time. Like when he's walking around with a small injury. But Ania's sister is like a priestess of Malkash, or whatever the thing's name is. So she actually can heal.
I do think it's kind of funny how the skeletons thing at the start was more of a dramatic fight or whatever than the thing they were hyping up to be something very important in here. It's just like, nope, anticlimactic.
Oh, when Aaron used push on the Skull King or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Skull King does come back because he is part of, like, the retinue of, like, the god of death here. But yeah, all of a sudden it was like, oh, so many of these people didn't survive this tutorial mission and you're not supposed to win. And then it's like push, and then all of a sudden, bam. But to be a little bit fair, you kind of find out why push was as effective as it was later on. But he uses push again and it helps. So John tells him to take it, so you got to 207 just said being based. I think it was him saying he'd like to find weird, gross stuff to do with his cousins or something. Oh, still find it weird or gross. Yeah, he is one of the people in the book that when they're like, well, if it's just cousins, it's fine for incest. And Bloodstorm is like, no, it's not. And he's like, adopted siblings are still siblings. And John said something about anime tells us that it's not or something.
Oh, good lord.
I don't quite remember the quote. I could try to find it. But yeah, Bloodstorm, yeah. He's like, no, like, you don't mess with your family that way. So he was the most complex, you're right, he was comic relief. I didn't see it as funny, but he was entertaining. So the battles were interesting. I honestly think this would have done better as like an anime. Because the way the battles were described, it sets up really well. They like do a few attacks or whatever, and then for the most part it's resolved, usually with Eren having issues. So while I did like the setups for the battles, they seem to be over like a little too quickly in a world that's, oh, you're going to be battling so many different things. So I'm going to ask a question now if you're ready for it. Was there anything that made you feel any emotion of any kind? Excitement, annoyance, or did you ever laugh out loud? So you said the Horcraft was kind of funny for you?
Yeah, that's just because I like wordplay stuff mostly. But otherwise, no, nothing.
Okay. So did you feel annoyed at anything?
Well, the pacing, I guess you could say.
Okay, that's fair.
I guess I should say nothing good besides that.
Well, as far for me as I don't think I laughed out loud. I said the humor didn't hit. Aaron's actions were annoying. And I'm going to get to Aaron, and besides him being hypocritical about John for wanting to screw, and then him being like, oh, I'm virtuous. There's other stuff I dislike about Aaron. I know what the author is going to try to do with Aaron, though. I absolutely know what the author is going to do. And the author is going to say anything you were annoyed by is going to be because Aaron has an 8 wisdom. What?
That would be what they fall back on.
I'm not saying that they did say that, but it's kind of implied. Okay. And aside from Bloodstorm's humor landing for me, the most distinct feeling I had while reading was annoyance from the plethora of small but noticeable grammatical errors, and especially the excessive focus on sex appeal throughout. Yeah, that was, like I said, that was a problem for me. Like, it was constantly about the sex, and yeah. One entire chapter, 18, was basically dedicated to nothing but that, and it was a complete side story, unrelated to anything before or after. There was never an instance of substance being interwoven or interjected at the topic at any point. Yeah, they just talked about sex. Like, if you took out the excessive pop culture references and Horny on Main, this book would be almost, I think, 100 pages shorter. I might be exaggerating a little bit. Okay, chapter 18. Let me look through my notes here, because I took excessive notes on every single chapter. I didn't write down, like, when they just talked about sex. Oh, that's the one with the Rusalka. A family's oldest son is set to marry a spinster but wants to marry a water spirit who wants him for breeding. Family needs money from this union. Aaron gives them the milk from the werewolf they ended up fighting in a different part to the spinster and the younger son of the Millers to appease the family. The older son can marry the water spirit. King Toad fills the moat of Dragon Keep for Rhaena's compensation. And yes, that's kind of around the time where Aaron fucks the water spirit that tries to, drown him while mating with him. And then they give him a difficult time because they're like, oh, yeah, they drown their men as they fuck them. Did you get to finish? And it's like, that's what you're worried about? Yeah, I get it. Like I said, I wasn't happy with all the sex. Like the most sexual, unsexy book ever. At least when I'm reading a spicy romance novel, they're trying to elicit something. And like I said, unless sex was being used as humor, it just. And I didn't get the humor. But no, absolutely not. Okay, so. Well, if you didn't make it entirely through reading the book, what made you ultimately give up?
I mean, technically, I didn't give up. I just was so busy with other stuff.
But would you have given up, do you think, based on what you read so far?
You know, I think I would have talked out of the whole, I have a dick again, so I'm going to start touching it.
If you would have, that's the exact chapter that Shy Guy quit around or after.
But I don't know what else comes before that, but yeah, that's, you know.
Okay, so I read the entire book. Is there anything that disconnected you from the story while reading? So, what annoyed you? The pacing, you said?
Yeah.
Was there anything else that annoyed you?
Just the characters just being, like, more two-dimensional than the cover art, probably.
So, you thought the characters were two-dimensional?
Yeah. At least the ones I saw. Apparently, there's one good character in the whole thing later on.
Well, you might not have liked Bloodstorm the way we did, but yeah. I also have a bit of a soft spot for Sparky, though.
I wonder why.
No. Sparky is a dragon shifter that can also shift into a dog, and he's actually a little kid.
Did you see what Shy Guy said here?
The subject matter, largely tired through normal and satirical lenses, is the reason I dropped the book, on top of other contributions like grammar, annoyances, and halted pacing. Yeah, and that wasn't even the worst of it at points. Okay, so we all admit that I can have a stick on my ass about certain things in writing. And we need to talk about the writing now, not just the pacing, because we've addressed the pacing, whole chapters that are nothing but funny banter time or exposition time. I'm gonna have you dig out my slides.
Okay, which one?
Starting from 1.
Okay, we did 5 already, so do keep that in mind.
I think 1 to 4. But first, we're gonna deal with one at a time. Contradictions. The book had many contradictions. And every time I would read something that was a contradiction or weird or a fragment that never went anywhere, my brain would be like, wait a fucking minute, I heard this before. So I'm going to read you the text in green. On page 8, it said, it wasn't so much that I was opposed to selling out, but corporate life didn't even pay you very much for your soul. I think Becky made like $2 extra an hour. As I read this, I was like, who the fuck is Becky? I had never heard of Becky before. Who is Becky? I actually went back and I reread up until that point, and then I finished the chapter going, who the fuck is Becky? Becky does not exist in this world right now.
Apparently, he also said that. What I mean is, like, the character.
Okay, but here's the thing. In the beginning, guess who's talking about Becky?
No, he does, and then he just forgets her later.
Yes, and on page 231, John sighed. Her name was Rebecca. I called her Becky. You dated a girl named Becky, I asked? And John will tell you then that there was a person named Becky who worked at Epic Dungeoneering and that he was friends with. But John knows her, but fucking Aaron doesn't. But Aaron dropped her name. So I'm wondering if the author meant Barbara here. Because the only girl with a B name up until that fucking point was the fucking psycho with the puppets named Barbara. I swear to God, I went back and forth looking for the name Becky, and I didn't find the name Becky again until page 231. But this bothered me so much, I kept thinking for 3-4 chapters, who is Becky? Are we going to see Becky, later on? Is she going to, jump into the world with him? What is going on here? Where is Becky? I literally had a Where is Waldo moment with Becky, And I kept looking for Becky for like the first 5 chapters. And I'm like, well, maybe they accidentally gave her the wrong name. And behold, when John gets into the world, she was his guide as well. So he knew her outside in the work environment outside the book. And then he knew her again as his Raven guide inside the Lords of Dragon Keep books or whatever. But I was just so caught up on who the fuck is Becky.
Okay, when do you need the
Yep.
Okay, I guess so.
At one point, the grammar errors became frequent enough over simple things, ending sentences with commas, that I looked to see if the book used AI. Yeah, I don't think so. This guy apparently has a lot of books, unless he uses AI to write them, which I can't even tell anymore. But this is the speaker in yellow is a side character. It's Ania, who was an NPC at one point. The blue is a hero who died recently. That would have been John. So she said, every time I tried to work with the imposters, which is what she calls anybody who jumps into Garland's body, because remember, they would jump in till they died, they blew me off to do their own nonsense. John struggled to get up. John is the bird. Not me. I totally ignored you and the other champion PCs or companion NPCs. More experience for me that way. I want you to go back and read what Ania said. Every time I tried to work with the imposters, they blew me off to do their own nonsense. And John says, not me. I ignored you and the other ones. Not me. Sounds like yes, you. John blew her off, and it says, they blew me off. Not me, says John. I totally did what you just fucking said. Everybody else did. And John was one of the last champions in the fucking world before Aaron got there. So, yes, it would have been you, John. Hello? Fuck you. Thank you. It would have been you. It would have been exactly you. Okay, next slide. Another contradiction, this time in pop culture references. Okay, this is the exposition chapter with Larry, George R.R. Martin, telling Aaron everything they need to know. They're fine in moderation, but Johnny Cage from the first live-action Mortal Kombat movie is probably a bridge too far. There's another one? I asked. Remember, the I in this story is always Aaron and never switches perspectives. Just one chapter later, it says, not the video game version either, the Brian Thompson one from Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Now, I know all you young whippersnappers don't realize this, but in the 90s, there were 2 different live-action Mortal Kombat movies. The first chapter you see there, he says he did not know there was another one. In the second chapter, or the chapter later, after the exposition chapter, he says, you look just like a discount Shao Kahn. I said, not the video game version, the Brian Thompson one from Annihilation. Annihilation is the second live-action movie that Aaron doesn't fucking know existed. Just a chapter before. Did he go home, watch the movie, jump back in the book, and fucking know what it was? Did he do that? I don't think so. But you see, these contradictions in this book aren't just little things like this, where he probably meant Barbara instead of Becky, and because Becky's introduced later. And it's not like the pop culture references. There's also other things. I need the phone. There are also other things like that. Okay, you interpret it as blowing me off to do their own nonsense, like nonsense to mean doing things unimportant or pointless. John ignoring to focus on leveling up quicker would be catering to the important goal. Yeah, but she said they ignored me, and he's like, not me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's bad. Next one or no?
Okay, but I want to talk about this before we get to the next one. Because while the contradictions might seem harmless, there are contradictions in the book that might have consequences. So, for instance, the Skull King that he's talking about, the discount Shao Kahn. The guy rides in on a dragon. And the first dragon you see him with is a dragon shifter named Cordelia, who is Sparky's aunt. The little Sparky dragon thing I told you guys about. Okay, so later on, the Skull King rides in on another dragon shifter named Boris, who is Sparky's father. And at points, it's like, you're not riding the other one anymore. And the Skull King says something to the effect of, yeah, Ava was, a boring bitch, I let her go or something. Or she wasn't who I wanted to really be with, like, as a companion, I let her go. Whatever it was. Basically saying Ava was the dragon shifter. Ava was Sparky's mother. Cordelia is Sparky's aunt. He was riding Cordelia. Cordelia was the evil dragon. Sparky's mother, Ava, as far as I can tell, was not an evil dragon. She's just protecting her son. So the fact that they got the name wrong there, it's like if you weren't keeping track of who it was, you'd be like, wait a minute, Sparky's mom was an evil dragon that was with the Skull King? No, she never was. The writer fucked up. And it's that kind of thing. So another thing is, during the exposition chapter, we find out from Larry that Aaron is about 1/14th God. Okay, because everybody who's brought here into this world and gets a bracelet and gets to be Garland, they are part of godlike heritage. And the Skull King is basically 1/7th God, and Aaron is like 1/14th God. Okay, skip all that. Go to the chapter where he meets Veles, the god of the underworld, the evil god of this world. And Veles says, your great-grandfather was whatever the fuck God. And so doing the fucking math of your great-grandparent being a god means he would have been 1/8 God. Now, could Veles, the evil god, have been lying to him about this? Sure. But there was no reason to lie about it. It wasn't like they get better powers the closer they are to godhood. Oh, I get that. I definitely get that. If the pacing is so boring, you're just going to kind of glaze over stuff like this. But the thing is, I would feel crazy when someone tells me something and then they contradict themselves or whatever. It drives me nuts. My brain is like, no, I'm not fucking imagining that I remembered something different. And I would go back around and I would fucking find it. I would look through my notes and shit. I would literally find it. So I'm going to give you one more slide about the writing itself. And it's not contradiction mode necessarily. Okay, this is a nonsensical fragment. Okay, so this, despite millions of fans anxiously waiting for the next installment and all of the adaptations running out of material, bring to life.
What? Yeah,
what does bring to life here? I think what they meant to say, the author meant to say, is something like, this despite millions of fans anxiously waiting for the next installment, all of the adaptations running out of material, or them running out of ways to bring it to life or something. Like he was trying to say, oh, well, less corpo speak or something. But just bring to life, just like that, is nonsensical. It's absolutely nonsensical. And there were a few times I found little bits and pieces in the book where I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like there was a time or two where it seemed like a word had been just missing, and I'd be going through it and like my brain would trip on it, like going down a staircase. It was like I missed the next step down. I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell? My brain was like, no, this isn't right. And then I'm like, no, it has to be right. It's just, the book is just like making me think I'm nuts or something. And then there are parts that are obvious. They're in an RPG. And they're like, yeah, that was how it was going to be, it seemed. There were going to be increasingly tougher enemies as we moved along. Also, the phrasing. Okay, it was how it was going to be. There was going to be. So notice how he says going to be, going to be. There were times in the book that he did this, and it was not for repetition's sake. Like, as far as when you repeat something, as a poet, mind you, you do it for impact. It just seemed like the author was just tripping and doing the same words on repeat at times. I could give you more examples if I go back through the book, but it's still the same thing. There were times where I would just almost repeat verbatim, and I would just be like, what? Like, what the hell's going on there? So when Shy Guy says the writing was clunky, yes. Yes, it was. Very much so. Like, absolutely very much so. You can take down our slides for now. Okay. So, I think we got why you stopped reading, maybe, everybody?
Yeah, more or less, I'd say.
Okay, because I literally said, was there anything that made you disconnect from the story? The references, by the way. Book was deceptively bloated. Yeah, that's another thing. You bring up a good point. Since it was like an RPG, at points it would just, every time Aaron leveled up, it would do his character sheet all over again. So there were like pages of this book just dedicated to like seeing his character sheet. Like each spell he got, each stuff like that. It didn't say like, oh, just pick this spell. It would literally show his character sheet again. So there were like 4 or 5 times maybe in the book where you literally had his entire character sheet printed out again just to see that he got a +1 wisdom and a new spell. So literally between that and we need to talk about the references. I don't know when I want to do that, but the references were much. Okay, so in the first chapter alone, I actually did this. A lot of pop culture references just in chapter 1 alone. So I said Natasha from Rocky and Bullwinkle, Lord of the Rings probably more than once, Pulp Fiction, Game of Thrones, The Simpsons, Doctor Doom, Spaceballs, and The Munsters. All in chapter 1. Now, mind you, I could have missed some, and things like Lord of the Rings were probably brought up more than once. And there were a lot of references to Lord of the Rings because his name is Aragorn. There are a lot of references to Eldritch Ring and like Elden Ring. There are a lot of different references, like absolutely a lot. Okay. I think interweaving outside material in the manner this book handled it does more harm than good, since it relies on the individual to know at least be aware of referential pieces that are largely completely unrelated to the book itself, like Elden Ring being said multiple times but never adding to the world of the book. Yep, I got you there. And it actually can take away from the story, and I'll explain that in a minute. If they were removed, not much would be lost, and sometimes nothing would be. It leaves itself open to breaking immersion completely, especially if the reader doesn't know anything about the references. It would mean nothing to them. Yes. As a matter of fact, we need a whole section about references. Actually, a whole section. And I guess this is where we go. Because it does break immersion. Incredibly so. You are completely correct on that. Sometimes as a geek, I'm like, oh, that's a cool reference, right? I get it. If he's a geek, this is his world. He's a code monkey. He does a lot of like RPG stuff. I get it. Okay? I get it. I get that he's from the real world and weaving in some of the stuff he knows, but it was just like so much over and over and over. And some things were repeatedly mentioned, like Elden Ring, like his Eldritch Ring. Repeatedly over and over and over and over. And Sometimes it would be just cool little geek references here and there. I would have liked that. I would have enjoyed that. Like, haha, Aaron is still the geek on the inside, even though he's supposed to be like this badass warrior trying to get through the world and stay alive with diplomacy. I get that. I would like that. I'm for that. But it was so over and over and over again. The same references eventually over and over again. So it took it from, oh, cool, the occasional, geek reference that would be something that you would do. And some references would be all over the map. Like, I'm sorry, how many people reading this would remember that 1313 like Mockingbird Lane is part of the Munsters? I was like, oh, I know that address, but I'm like 41 years old, okay? And this thing came out in the 60s. So technically, even I should know the Munsters address. Okay? I should not know, but I do. So, like, there are things that were totally out of pocket for a geek. Like, I don't want to be stereotypical like this, but, like, mentioning Pulp Fiction, I'm like, I guess that's a really well, like, versed in media geek. I don't know. But there are just some things. And some descriptions were replaced by references. At one point, he mentions Velis, the villain of the story, the evil god. Okay, I got you there. Because the evil god, he said looked like a particular actor. And I would have to look up who. I think it's in chapter 23. Now, mind you, I am a person who does not pay attention to like a lot of actors anymore. Okay? So I just keep that in mind. But I think it was chapter 23. I would have to like look up what's going on here. By the way, I don't think this book is self-published. I thought it was at first. But I kind of looked into Crossroad Press, and I think they are traditional, but I might not be like 100 on that. Okay, so when we're dealing with Velis, they talk about him reminding them of something. Hang on a minute. I'm trying to figure out which chapter was the exposition chapter. One quick second. I don't have this brought up in my notes. I wish I did. I thought it was 23, but I could be wrong. Nope, that is not the exposition chapter. I literally wrote it down, which one it is. Maybe it's 25. Yep, 25. Exposition time, I say. So that's the one that's like a dream but not a dream. That's the one where we get kind of like what Velis looks like. Okay, so give me a quick second here. By the way, chapter 24 literally has the word incest in the title, just in case you don't fucking believe me. I just literally scrolled by it. Okay, a certain point of view. So Larry is talking about things, and yep, literally says that Valentin, who was the Skull King, is 1/7 god, and that 1/14 god is Aaron. So that is something. They mentioned Terry Pratchett, by the way, and I'm like, maybe you should keep him out of your mouth. But anyway, that's just my thought. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate... Okay, hold on. I'm really trying to find it. I really wish I would have... Okay, Larry. Maybe it's like the chapter right after. Okay. This is one of the things I was talking about. While I wasn't sure how you sex dragons, I had to say this one seemed more feminine somehow than I imagined. A Smog or a Glaurung sort of creature. So if you don't know who those two dragons are, you would not know. Okay? So that's just one of the things I'm talking about. I'm trying to figure out... Okay, I'm going to start reading this. "Halt," a figure said, appearing beside me with the same kind of black smoke that had teleported Larry away. Both of us turned to see a bearded man of immense power and dignity standing there in a midnight blue robe that had large glittering black gemstone at the base of his neck. He had a well-trimmed beard and a terrifying gaze. In his left hand, he was holding a staff with a coiled gold horned dragon at the top of it. It took me a second to recognize him. "Peter Stormore?" I asked. And I literally thought to myself, who the fuck is Peter Stormore? I had to stop, go through the book, and then I had to look up who that was. And later on, John and Aaron are talking about who would play Ania in the next adaptation. And I know the author was hoping that we would go look and see what the actresses looked like. I'm sorry I took you on a tangent there, but I think it kind of accents my point. I had no idea who the fuck that was. And Shy Guy's point. I have no idea. So do you go hunting and take yourself out of the book? Or do you just leave it go? And at least I gotta say this. He did give a description before listing off the actor. There have been times where he doesn't list off an actor or doesn't describe much, and then he just fucking turns around and says, "Oh, this actor, oh, this character in a game." I didn't bother looking up the references. I was just like, not in the book, not my problem, get fucked. Yeah, sometimes the references were stand-ins. Sometimes they were like little Easter eggs, which I appreciated as a geek, but sometimes they were just stand-ins for description. And I understand doing that maybe once per book or something, being like, oh, he looked a little like James Earl Jones, or he looked, she looked a little bit like Meryl Streep, or whoever the fuck old ass actor I'm thinking of today. But honestly, just giving like actors' names and hoping like we know who they are. Like I said, I kind of know what Peter Stormare looks like now. Do I remember anything he played in? Fuck no. So, okay, so yeah, do you feel like the references were used well? Not really. Occasionally, I felt like it added a little something to his geekiness, but for the most part, fuck no. So, let's talk about the main character. How did you feel about Aragorn/Aaron and how he handled things? I already brought up how I thought he was a hypocrite about John and sex because he had sex with the vampire and the Rusalka, immediately saying he was a one-woman man. So, how else did you feel about it? Any thoughts on the main character from what any of you read? Okay. Shy Guy said, wasn't a fan of his personality. He was both realistic and fantastical. Spectrum's very average, ordinary, which is not a problem in and of itself. He just failed to stand out in any particular way, be it good or bad. And the thing is, if you are writing a character, they should be, the perspective of the person should be the one that's the most interesting, I feel. Like, your main character, the one you're following around in their fucking head, should be the most interesting character. He did good deeds when he was supposed to, and to his credit, good, since the others were either selfish or had some aspect that made their actions off kilter from standard rationales. His redeeming qualities didn't go much farther than him being not a horrible person, just not forgettable. Okay, so I think he's a bit of a hypocrite. I did appreciate the diplomacy, but it was employed at the weirdest times. Okay, like, I understand him going off on Father Adolf, because Father Adolf was an asshat. But he tried diplomacy with so many other things, including bad guys. So why he didn't just follow John and say, hey, whatever. I guess because I suppose it was to show that he really hates injustice. But one of the things that pissed me off about Aaron, and I know it probably shouldn't, but it does, and Another thing is, Aaron is on the spectrum. Okay? So I feel like, and I'm going to say this very lightly, I'm not neurodivergent that I know of. And I feel like there are two aspects of this that make you kind of, I feel like he wanted us to like know that about himself because it would help us understand him more. But at the same time, I also feel like it could have been used later on by people who like the book, let's say, if not the author himself, to say, well, as a neurotypical person, you're not going to get Aaron because he is autistic or on the spectrum. And I don't agree with that because I understood Aaron as far as most things go. But the other thing is Aaron having an 8 for wisdom. I think that it was supposed to keep us from criticizing when he did something ridiculous. And one of the things that I hated about Aaron's character so much was that he was incurious. So in the beginning of the book, the first chapter, his boss tells him, you're going to go to Larry's house, George R.R. Martin's house, and get the new manuscript. Sign nothing, look at nothing, get in, get out. And they give him a bracelet. The bracelet is a hard bracelet. Yet when they snap it, it conforms to his wrist like a second skin. And up pops a character sheet and a GPS. Now, he's really a true geek, a true fucking geek, and he is a code monkey, so he has worked at the company. He sees the bracelet with the character sheet, fiddles with nothing. He sees how it conforms to his wrist, says, oh, they must be working on some new technology here. Guess I'll be on my way. What the fuck, Aaron? What the ever-living fuck? Like, there are just so many things he'll see, and he'll just be like, oh, that's how it is. Was him loving Ania, and right after being established, he decides to bang the water woman. Yep. And I'm gonna give another spoiler, okay? When he fucks the goddess Makash, who is basically the world in this, like the earth in this, like she is like the deity that represents the planet or whatever, and she is the one that Ania's sister is worshipping. She literally tells him, bang more women, it'll make Ania jealous, because he does get to bang Ania at some point. But Ania's just like, yeah, that was a nice roll in the hay. Don't get attached to me. And Makash later on is like, oh, yeah, the more sex you have with more women, the more she'll actually want you because it'll make her jealous. And I'm just like, are we really doing this, motherfucker? Are we really going down this road? But apparently we are. Maybe, like, Makash was the last person he had sex with. So he had sex with 4 women in this book. 2 almost right away after saying he was better than John. The water spirit and the, like, prostitute, the sex worker, and the black cat that was the vampire elf. And then he has sex with Ania. And then he has sex with the goddess Makash, who tells him to make her jealous by banging more ladies. So yeah, that's fun. But yeah, I really did not like his incuriosity. It drove me mad. Like, he never saw, like, to go deeper into things. A lot of times he was just like, oh, that's how this is. Okay, then. What do you mean, okay, then? Back the fuck up. Look into this more. Like, your life could literally fucking depend on this here, buddy. Why are we just fucking playing with our dick? Like, absolutely not. The fact that he was incurious really made me frustrated. Really made me frustrated. I did like that he tried diplomacy, but here he has like an 8 wisdom, and it comes out at the weirdest times. Some things, I believe, whether it should go off his intelligence score, he's like, well, I never did have high wisdom. And some things that are based off of, like, the other, it's just like, oh, I can solve this easily. And I'm just like, can you, though? Like, absolutely not. So where they decide what follows, like, is it off of intelligence or wisdom? Like, it's like, no, nobody fucking cares at this point, I guess, because they can't even make up their mind. So, but yeah, the incuriosity was a really, really horrible thing for me. Especially because if you're in a world where you need to know if things work the way that you think they do, that you hope they do, and you're just like, oh, whatever. Yeah, so I wasn't that high on him. I did like the diplomacy stuff, but then he would be, just other things, and I would just be like, oh, okay, okay. But like I said, I know that they're going to be like, well, he is autistic, like you're not, but I don't think that matters with, like, in curiosity and whatnot. I mean, I know a lot of, like, autistic people, and they're not a monolith, obviously, but I think that most of them, if their life actually depended on something, would actually look into more things. So, how would you rate the world building and why? Any thoughts as to the world?
It was like really generic, I felt.
So you thought it was just really bog standard, nothing special?
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. They end up in a village. They end up going to a tavern. Aaron even says, like, ye old tavern, it's how adventurers get together. The world building, I likewise thought was very bog standard, unsurprising, since derivativeness is again the point for the satirical angle, but that doesn't change the fact that the innate subject matter simply doesn't have much to work off of. That is true. If you don't deviate too much because you want to keep it, as something that everybody understands as universal, or the satirical angle, you are right. Like, how could he change it that much? Some of it, I'd argue, was sloppy, as the pace and rate in which it introduced characters felt inconsistent and sometimes arbitrary to me. Some characters would be talked about in a consecutive chain, giving them little to no time to simmer before moving on to another, along with not being brought up again for a while after, leading to slipperier remembrance. Yeah, there is a woman named Francine that Ania talks about, who was one of the champions inside of Garland at one point. You never see her. You never see her in this book because she's a setup for another book. And it's like, okay, but, like, am I just supposed to discard her being there then? Like, I wish they would have, you're right, introducing it better or pacing it better. Like I said, seeing Becky on page 8, not again until page 231, was really a mindfuck for me. Because Aaron knows her, doesn't know her. She's a corporate sellout, but wait, Becky isn't corporate, she's a receptionist. That was wild. I said, typical fare. Dragon spells gods. Mixing fantasy with tech elements. Okay, so Edie, Epic Dungeoneering, the company that Aaron works for, is not a nice company. We've established this. At one point, in one of the side quests, the person they're trying to help comes downstairs with goggles and a flamethrower. And later on, in this world, they go to, like, this big tree, like the Tree of Life, an Eldritch Tree, or whatever. Like the tree from Elden Ring, essentially. Yggdrasil, whatever you want to call it. And around it, there are machines like backhoes and bulldozers and stuff, and they're digging up trees around it. So they're deforesting it. So you see, like, these fantasy creatures, and they're working like construction. And I kind of thought that was neat, the way that Epic Dungeoneering could eventually and essentially, like, augment this world, because they're bringing tech into this world to, like, totally ravage it. Yeah, like I said, they mentioned Becky once, and it wasn't in context of anything else. It was just like Becky is a corporate shell, and John's like, I had a friend named Becky. She was a receptionist. I'm like, how the fuck was Becky corporate then? Becky, the corporate receptionist, I guess. And she is considered, in John's eyes, like a hero. She wanted to always do the right thing. She would try to encourage John to get back into the world, to help people, to save them, to level up by making a difference. And since John saw everybody as an NPC, not realizing that these people are probably under a fucking spell and are literally just going to like these villages to die over and over and over and over again. Like the world is slowly getting depopulated as each loop begins anew. John was just like, ah, fuck it, whatever. So Becky is courageous and everything, but Becky is also apparently a corporate shell. So, like I said, I did like that it was based off of Slavic folklore. I do think that eventually we are going to see more characters like Baba Yaga. I thought, honestly, that Barbara would have had some kind of connection to her just because of how fucking nutso she is. But I don't know. So, yeah, it was pretty bog standard. I did like when they juxtaposed the modern tech to the magical stuff. I enjoyed that. Like the crossover between worlds. So, and yeah, Bloodstorm was amazing. I liked Sparky. The lore behind Sparky and his family was interesting. That they were from the Poppy family, and they were essentially vassals of the Rose family, which Ania and Agatha are Ania and Agatha Rose. And their family was betrayed by the Poppies, who are their vassals. And they were cursed after like doing that to her family. So I thought that was interesting. I have one more slide I'm just gonna put up as we wrap up here, because this is just some of the vocabulary from the story. You thought it was middle school writing? Like very junior? You know, I thought maybe it could be like a young adult book, except for all the talk about fucking sex. Fucking. Like I said, I have heard more about sex and masturbation than some of the spicy romance books I've read. They never gave you a play-by-play. They do tell you, like, when Ania and Aaron have sex, he uses the refresh spell to keep going and keep her happy. But they don't go into it. So it was kind of like, maybe you're right, because like all the sex references is kind of like, yeah, bro, it was the sexiest sex ever. They sexed sexily, dude. And it wasn't like anything graphic, but it was like over and over again. But I felt like it could have been a more cohesive narrative if they just would have if they would have figured out a better way to move the exposition through the chapters instead of one lump sum. If they cut down on the references just for references' sake. If they would have put more time into the world building and making the characters different. You know, it could have been an actually good book. I like isekais. I like the level up aspects of the book, because it's just when I find characters in different worlds, I really enjoy that. I thought I would really enjoy this. And while there were really cool features, like, they could have really put more emphasis on the rules of being in a video game. Especially in regards to, like, epic dungeoneering, putting the technology into this, like, world that's supposed to be more like a video game. How do video game rules coincide with when they bring in a flamethrower? When they bring in construction equipment? So it was okay. Like, if I read the next book in the series, I'd be like, okay. Like, I'd know going in, like, some of these things I'm just gonna have to, like, kind of close my eyes and walk through. If I never read the second book, would I be disappointed? No. So at the end of the first book, they take out the first god. And the stories are such that they have to like not, I guess not God, but it's a god. Chernobog is a god, kind of, sort of. So they take him out. So it's set up where the characters have to take out like 4 different castles or something with 4 different guardians, and they're each kind of a god or like a godlike creature, and then they can fight Veles, the god of the dead. Because Veles wants to go through this world, kill everybody, like turn it into his own paradise, and then he wants to do the same thing to Earth. Okay? But first you have to get more people under your belt and stuff. And that's another thing. Since they're setting up for this trilogy, they have to bring in people that don't matter right now, like Francine, like I told you about. I think Francine is going to end up alive in the next book. The woman that Ania talked about. Also, they keep talking about the Mad Queen and the Dragon Queen, who we have not seen. And I know it's because in this world, they're going to need to petition the Dragon Queen for help. And the Dragon Queen is also Garland's, the main character's, lover on and off. And she also is a dragon shifter. And the Mad Queen is her twin sister, Apollonia. And Apollonia is working with Veles. And the Mad Queen is winning over the Dragon Queen, who is apparently the good person. So, like, they have to set us up, but it's like all this lore that you don't really need too much of because they don't bring it up. And another thing, it's like Piotr, I think his name was, Garland's master. You save him in the tutorial mission of the game, of the book. Okay? You save this guy. Do you want to bet you see the guy again in this book after you save him? No, because he's going to go off to the capital or some fucking thing to petition them for help, for aid, whatever. Because all of the Undermasters outside of Aaron, who's playing Garland, Ania, who is the only ever female dungeon Undermaster, and Piotr, who is basically a retired Undermaster with Wine, Women, and Song. He's kind of a layabout, a slacker. He's like ready for retirement and just doesn't die. Those are the only 3 Undermasters there are. Well, but with the in-world author being the guy being the final boss. You know something? Larry has enough power where I don't doubt something will go on with that. But he's supposedly the champion of the good god in this world. But who knows? Who honestly knows? So, I wish they wouldn't give us so many fragments of lore that we had to keep in mind in other books. It's like, okay, but what happens if I never read the next book? I know they have to foreshadow some things, but I just wish they would have done it in a better way at points. So, would I read the second book? Yes. I would read the rest of the series probably. But going in with what I know, I would have to kind of just run through, like, with blinders on, to, like, all the other shit that I don't need to know about, or all the other shit that contradicts itself. And since both of you stopped reading the book before you got all the way through, I would say you probably wouldn't read the next one. I've read worse. The gods in this book are at least fairly consistent. I've read it where, like, the overworld lore with gods and stuff doesn't even make sense. They've kept it fairly, Makash was made with her sister for, like, some of the gods. And there is another god that is, like, the big 3. There are, like, 3 gods and 2 goddesses. And the 3 gods are, like, the good god, like the god of the sky, the evil god, which is the god of the ground and the death and whatever else. And the third one was like a god who stays in his mountain and is like the crafter of everything and the god of the dwarves. And he never comes out of his mountain for any reason. And I'm thinking, so wait, Veles does not touch the god of the mountain's dwarves at all? Like, the god of the mountain doesn't know this entire fucking world is dying? He doesn't feel vibrations in the land dying? he doesn't feel like any of his dwarves have gone missing. Like, is Velas intentionally trying to keep the other god in the dark so the other god doesn't come out of hiding? Did Velas already kill the other god and it's just like, oh, he's in his mountain home, don't worry about him, he doesn't care? Like, if I were living on a planet that was dying and I were like a patron saint or god or whatever to a specific type of people that are living, that would be considered, unless the dwarves are like golems or like homunculi and they're not really alive, so he doesn't really fucking care. The arranged marriage chapter, was that the one with the Vasalka, or was that a different one, like the water spirit? Because we could go back to that, because that was something. Like, his mother only wanted him married so they would get money. But to be fair, like, back in the day, that's what marriage was. Marriage wasn't about love. It was about, chapter 18. Yeah, I think that was... Let me dig out my notes here. Yeah, that is the one with the spinster. Yeah, the family only wanted to marry him off for money. But the woman who is the water spirit only wanted him for breeding, like the older son for breeding. So it's like, yay for everybody using everybody else, I guess. I'm surprised you found it so horrendous and kept going, honestly. Like, that would have been your tadpole point, you would have thought. But yeah, I did like I said, I don't mean to shit on this book. I have read worse. But it's like, I do have to say, though, about the battles, outside of the fact that they ended up pretty... The battles ended too quickly, sometimes. But I did like the setup for them. I will say that again. Like, the end boss of the series, like, of the book, Chernobog, like, the fight with him, I found was kind of interesting. Because of how he played it and everything that happened. I felt that was clever. I'm going to spoil the last fight for you, so if you don't want to hear it, you can click off now. But they're at the top of the tree, having freed the priestesses of the Makash Order, because they were all taken captive by Velas' soldiers. And they free the women. They have to fight for them to get them out of there. And they're at the top of the tree where there is this bell. And the bell calls Chernobog. And here the Skull King is back and better than ever with the dragon he's riding, Boris, Sparky's father. And all of a sudden, Aaron is like dodging around and he hits the bell. So because he summons Chernobog around the time that the Skull King is flying around with a dragon, Chernobog ends up fighting with Valentin because the cantrip, meaning the low-level spell, the zero-level spell he can keep using, Aaron can keep using, is ventriloquism. So when he calls Chernobog by hitting the bell, he projects the Skull King's voice saying, I am Valentin, I renounce evil, I want to be a hero again. So they both fight. But here's the thing, couldn't Valentin have just also said, he's throwing his voice, it's not me, but by the time, like, Valentin says anything or tries to do anything, Chernobog is already attacking, so maybe not, but the Ratkin chapter was interesting. I liked that because it showed, like, Epic Dungeoneering was giving the tech to this world, because the woman comes down the stairs with the goggles and the flamethrower, looking to kill the rats. So I thought that was cool that they were actually showing that this world could be like affected by our world. So I did like that. I hope the author does more of that, like puts more modern technology in the fantasy setting. But like I said, in the fantasy setting, it works like a game. So I wish they would outline through action, not through exposition, how this is going to work. Do the real world things have to still work inside the fantasy perimeter? Or is it like, ah, fuck it, they're real, so like a gun is real, so it doesn't have game like plot armor or anything, you know? So I do wonder how that's gonna go. Otherwise, I don't really have much else to say about the book. Any final thoughts at any point? I'm just leaving these up on the screen for now, just in case you all want to learn something that you didn't know before. Fiduciary is like the only word that you can get through context. And that was the chapter that Shy Guy hated so much. Because eventually, Aaron just comes out and says fiduciary, whatever. And they're like, what? And he says money. So there's diaphanous. There is the Vancian magic system they mentioned. Something a geek would know, but not much else. So just in case you want words, I did know what most of these words meant. I did not know the word for tabard, but when I saw what it was, I knew what was being talked about. Like, I've seen the dress and stuff from, like, Ren fairs, like the vast thing, but I didn't know what it was called. So, I did learn something because of that. So, if nothing else, I did learn what the vest that was worn over clothes in the Middle Ages was called. So, yeah, I would prefer it to be more positive, but I do think that there are good bones here. I just wish that certain things would be toned down or rewritten or whatever. I think the author really needs to, figure out his inconsistencies and stuff. I will end this by saying, I read a story to the shoppers around Christmas time that I wrote. And I didn't keep up the video. And I think Shy Guy might be one of the only people who remembers it because it was for my Christmas stream. Why am I bringing up my own writing? Because I am a writer. I'm a poet mostly, but I write short stories and whatnot. And in my short story, I actually wrote something that did not make sense because it contradicted itself. Like, a character was supposed to be wearing a helmet with goggles, and then at the end of the story, the character gets hurt in the eye. And it acted like there was no helmet in place. So as I'm revising the story to maybe send out at some point, I was looking at it and I'm like, no, that actually should not happen. Because if he's wearing this the way I say he is, it would not work. So every author can get tripped the fuck up by their own stories. And it's very hard to edit your own work. I don't know, like, what the press that put out this book, what they actually do in terms of editing and stuff, but it would have been good to find some beta readers for this book and have somebody like anal like me be like, oh, this doesn't work. But like I said, I do know as a writer how difficult it can be to distance yourself from your words, where you make a change and you think you added the right words, but you didn't. You like cut out half the sentence and didn't put it back together correctly, so you can see the bad stitching or just like where the sentence dropped off and it should have finished. Like, maybe that's why there were commas instead of periods. Maybe there was more there. Maybe it was just periods because they couldn't, or commas because they couldn't see it wasn't a period. But it happens. Which is why it's so freaking important to find more people to read your shit. Because you are the worst editor of your own books. Trust me. If I find problems in less than 2,000 words. I can't imagine what it's like in 400 pages. So this comes in no way for me being like, ha ha ha, I'm better. No, my fiction is shit. It's absolute shit, and I know that. But that's one of the reasons why I can tell other people have struggles too. So, all right, everybody, I think that'll do for book club. If you want another book club, certain genre and stuff, let me know. We can try this again. Maybe we'll do one every couple months. Maybe this will be the only one. Just let me know. And I will see you next week for more Cult of the Lamb Woolhaven. And I don't know what else. But I'm just going to tell you this much. Husby might have bought both of us Slay the Spire too. So, might be that. We'll see. All right, everyone. I will see you next week. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Stay warm. And I'll see you next time. Bye.